BioWare has officially shifted all of their resources to working on Mass Effect 5. In an interview with Rolling Stone, John Epler confirmed that the full attention has now shifted entirely to the next Mass Effect as BioWare's current project. Veilguard will not be getting any DLC, which we knew going into the game. They said that a while ago. So with BioWare fully focusing on Mass Effect 5 and N7 Day being 3 days away, here is an updated wish list for Mass Effect 5 and everything that I want or don't want based on what BioWare did with Dragon Age Veilguard. 2 things on my list have already been confirmed. Mass Effect will lean into photorealism and will have a more mature tone. Something that I have missed in Dragon Age for a long time, but something that I've always loved about Mass Effect and did not feel with Andromeda is that I really love the Renegade system. It's not perfect and it definitely needs a lot of updating and more nuance, but I love being an asshole in video games. Maybe that's a little bit of a red flag, but a lot of the time you're just being stern and pragmatic. In Mass Effect 2, yes, you can be an absolute asshole, but majority of the time you're just kind of being stern, you're not dealing with bullshit. And I loved being able to lean into that. I am usually a pure Renegade player. My playthroughs usually look about 90% Renegade, 10% Paragon. That is how I like to play Mass Effect. And a lot of people actually don't. Renegade is obviously the lesser chosen choice, but I do think it offers some interesting choices. Jennifer Hale as Renegade FemShep is especially perfect. You cannot deny how good these clips are, and I desperately want more of this.
Take your offer and cram it up your ass. Try it and you'll be scanning the inside of your colon. I'll relinquish 1 bullet. Where do you want it? You're working too hard.
I've got nothing more to say to you. If you should...
How about goodbye?
What are you looking at?
The man whose day I'm about to ruin.
I'm not looking for trouble.
Maybe I am. Maybe you better get out of here before I find you some.
You're in the wrong place, honey. Strippers' quarters are that way.
Show me yours, tough guy. I bet mine's bigger.
Even if you don't play Renegade, part of why the Paragon options hit so hard is because there was an opposite choice, where you could be an asshole, you could be mean, you could be cruel. And I know a lot of people who play Paragon even just watch the options because they are so interesting and so different. And I need that variance to exist in Mass Effect. People should be allowed to be nice, but also allowed to be mean. People should be allowed to make choices on either spectrum. And that's something that Dragon Age and Veilguard do not have anymore. And it's just something that I really miss. I just really miss the choices around morality. So I hope we can lean more into that. I want to be able to kick people out of windows again and to shoot people who are pissing me off. I want to be able to be mean to companions. And again, I know a lot of what I'm saying doesn't resonate with a lot of people. And that's fine, but I just want the option. And I think it's so important that those exist within Mass Effect. The Milky Way galaxy is supposed to have grit and darkness and be morally complex. And I just hope that our protagonist can reflect that. Overall, I just want something that is edgier, something that is darker. And I really hope that they can capture that. With the more mature tone comment that Gamble made, I really do hope that we get a cast of companions that feels more mature. Something with Andromeda is that everybody felt like they were kind of in their early 20s. Aside from Drac, Vetra, and Jal, everybody felt very young. And I know those characters probably resonated with some people, but for me, they just weren't companions that I would have expected to meet in Mass Effect. They felt very young and inexperienced and immature. And I think that paired with Ryder being so young and inexperienced and immature really kind of threw off the entire tone of dialogue and banter and the storylines. I just feel like it lowered the stakes of the actual story and Ryder's journey, so I hope that isn't something we experience again in Mass Effect 5. I don't think companions necessarily have to be older to achieve that. I just hope that they're more grounded. I want to see more conflict between the companions, and I want to see the companions not always get along with whoever our protagonist is. There's just a lot of room for interesting dynamics, and I just want to see more of it. I really loved in Mass Effect 3 how Javik and Liara have this extremely complicated relationship, and I thought that was one of the more interesting dynamics of the games. I want to see stuff like that return. And speaking of the companions, I do think Veilguard did a good job of making enough companion content. I really like how they move around the lighthouse and how many cutscenes there were, how much banter and companion dynamics there were. But for Mass Effect 5, I hope that there is a little bit more romance content, but also that the romances are steamier. I don't need full-on sex scenes or anything like that, but I do think that when you look at past Mass Effect games, especially Andromeda, the romance scenes were spicier. So I do hope that they lean more into the mature aspects of romance as well. I did really like Jaal's scene in Andromeda, and I know a lot of people like Cora's scene, even though I'm not a huge fan. But I do hope that they do stuff like that again. Building off of what I just said about sexiness, I do hope something else that returns is kind of the form-fitting armor that I really like in Mass Effect. I feel like Mass Effect did a good job of kind of having the bulky, heavier armor, but also the lighter form-fitting sets, and I really hope to see those come back. This armor set in particular is one of my favorites, so I'm really hoping to see stuff like this return. I don't mean to sound creepy, but I do like to make my characters look sexy, and form-fitting armor is the best way to do that. And I've always really liked Mass Effect's designs, so I hope they can bring that back. Something else that I want to mention now that I've spoken about the visuals of Mass Effect 5 is that I hope that Mass Effect 5 takes the visuals from the original trilogy and kind of ignores some of the stuff that Andromeda did. I know the Angara are back, and while I do kind of like their designs, I think their concept art was a lot more successful in being good looking, not necessarily attractive, just nice to look at. I think the Angara that we get in Andromeda are a little bit weird looking. And I know they're supposed to be aliens, I know, but there's something off about their designs. Maybe it's the eyes, maybe it's the teeth, I'm not exactly sure. But I really do hope that they kind of update the designs and make them more appealing. With that said, Andromeda also used the weird legs for the Turians, and I hope that they don't do that, even though we have already seen that on the concept art that we got last year. So I think that one's kind of a lost cause. But I do hope that they kind of update some of the visuals so that Andromeda, whatever is pulled from it, matches more from the original trilogy. Aside from the visuals, one major BioWare staple that everyone has come to expect from their games is choices and consequences. Veilguard definitely has choices, but they're more so towards later in the game. And I think the game could have benefited from more. So I hope that Mass Effect kind of takes that and realizes that people want more of that. They want decisions that alter the way entire locations look, that affect your companions, that affect your romances, that affect your game. And I hope that Mass Effect 5 has more. With that, I also want to see the return of some consequences from previous choices. Veilguard not using the keep is a very controversial decision, and I do think it is a mistake. They should have brought in more choices, even if it was just small codex entries. There should have been more connections to past choices. And while I do think that is easier to do in the Dragon Age series because there is so many smaller ones, in Mass Effect, I hope they bring that back. I don't expect them to use the Mass Effect archives, and honestly, if it means that the game would have to be online and connect to the EA servers, I almost don't want them to. But if they're gonna do kind of anything like Veilguard did, where at the beginning of the game you choose choices from the past, they need way more than 3 decisions. And looking back, I do think that is kind of hard to do, considering that the choices in Mass Effect literally change the entire course of the galaxy. Mass Effect and Dragon Age, while very similar, are pretty different. Dragon Age has a bunch of small decisions that were supposed to carry through the entire series, where Mass Effect leads you up to these major decisions that you kind of make in Mass Effect 3. Andromeda didn't really have any of that. I feel like I made one choice in Andromeda that I would actually consider impactful. So aside from that, I don't feel like there was much weight to what I was doing. And I just hope that Mass Effect 5 does that. We don't know if this is the start of a new trilogy or if this is like a one-off story, but I hope even if we're not leading up to something again like Mass Effect 3, I still hope that Mass Effect 5 has some weight to it. Something else I actually don't want in Mass Effect 5 is an alien protagonist. And I know that's going to be a hot take. I want to play as a human for one main reason. Mass Effect and Dragon Age both have worlds that have very distinct differences depending on what type of race exists within that world. Alien species have very different cultures, histories, and connections. And so when you have a world where you play as a different race, but as that race you don't feel all of those small connections to the world, which is something that I experienced in almost every single Dragon Age game. It wasn't the first time in Veilguard. Every Dragon Age game has been like that. You have someone explaining elven history to an elf. You have someone telling you about why dwarves don't have magic as a dwarf. It happens all the time. And it's something that has always annoyed me, and I just don't want to experience that in Mass Effect also. I really like the perspective of being a human because it is relatable. It's how we as humans approach the sci-fi genre, and it's part of why the story connects to so many people. Mass Effect has always been a story about the human experience in the larger universe. We are meeting new races, exploring new planets, learning new things. And that's something that I really, really love about Mass Effect. It feels relatable because of that. So yes, I know that is a hot take, but with Mass Effect 5, I just want to play as another human, experiencing the galaxy. And I don't think you can get that same experience if you play as another race, who are all familiar with how the galaxy works. Mass Effect is such a unique story and such a unique experience with Shepard. It's going to be hard to move on from that if we do. I've said a million times before, I don't think Shepard is coming back. And the way that Veilguard was handled really reaffirms that for me, so I don't really expect to see Shepard again. So whoever follows in their footsteps is going to have some very big shoes to fill. So I do hope they take some of the actual criticism around Veilguard and think about it when they're developing Mass Effect 5. There is also some things that I would like them to bring over though. No microtransactions, no EA account required, fully offline, no DRM, no microtransactions. I think those are all really good things that I hope we don't see in Mass Effect 5. I also hope that they bring back photo mode, pausing during cutscenes, resumable banter, companions moving around whatever ship we have, and having a glamour system. I think the Veilguard's was pretty simple, but I do hope that Mass Effect 5 has some type of transmog system alongside an unlimited inventory. I thought those are really good quality of life features that I really enjoyed in Veilguard. Overall, I love Veilguard because of how much the story impacted me, how much the characters resonated with me, and those are the things that are the most important to me. Even still, there's some things that I don't like about Veilguard as well. And there is some actual genuine criticism out there for the game. So I do hope that BioWare is listening to that. I really do think that in a lot of ways, Veilguard is going to be a lesson for the studio and how they approach Mass Effect 5. And that they'll see a lot of what their fans were expecting, what people did or didn't click with. And I do hope that they take some of the actual criticism and do apply it to Mass Effect 5. As we approach N7 Day and after we just had the release of Veilguard, let me know what you do or don't want to see pulled from Veilguard, and what you expect to see for this upcoming N7 Day. I am very excited, I cannot wait, so please let me know all your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you for N7 Day. Thank you to all my channel members, thank you to all my Patreon members, and see you next time.